This is the story of Sita, a story of a daughter, a friend, a princess, a queen, a wife and mother. This is her story. Stop if you think you know the story, or if you know parts of it, or your version of it. Tonight, be prepared to listen to ours. Now, that is a very interesting story.
Okay. Namaskar. I welcome you all to our interview series in pursuit of excellence, presented by Sahapedia and Sangeet Natak. Today we have amongst us a very renowned contemporary dancer and choreographer, Dr. Anita Ratnam. Namaste, Anita Akka. How are you?
Namaste.
Akka, we were talking about neoclassical and contemporary, and you know how you forayed into it after having a very solid training in the fields of Bharatanatyam, Mohiniyattam, and Kathakali also. So, if you could just take us through your early journey, I mean, how you were introduced to dance, and then your foray into the contemporary world, will be really like.
Thank you, Madhur. And thank you for this invitation and opportunity. I'm a product of the 1950s. Now, that also means that I was automatically knitted or woven into the ferment of what New India meant. My family was very, very keen on making me a global citizen, but a rooted Indian and a rooted Tamilian. So we had so many influences. I was the eldest, and we had so many influences growing up. The only school to study was a convent education school run by Irish Catholic nuns. But weekends and early mornings and evenings, there was always other kinds of inputs with the Vedas and the Shastras and the Shlokas and dance and sports. So the body in play. So that's what I want to talk about. It's not just a body that is trained in one kind of a movement system. I was exposed to many things: hiking, bicycling, running, trekking, tennis, swimming, and Bharatanatyam. But I was very fortunate because now you can't start a classical dance class before you're maybe 6 years old. And in those days, we didn't have those kinds of age restrictions. If you were seen to have talent, you could just learn. I was very lucky because my first teacher, Raji Narayan, she's now almost 90 and she lives in Mumbai, but she was like a family friend. So when she would come home, she would just say, "Vada Raja, come sit on my lap." And she would sing a song, and I believe I would automatically move and, just naturally. And I was told that when my parents had friends over, I would just barge into the room and just start sort of dancing whatever I wanted. So this kind of restless energy obviously was, noticed. Now, my mother desperately wanted to learn to dance, but her very strict father never gave her the opportunity. So when she got married, I think she made a silent vow saying that if I have a daughter, I'm going to give her that opportunity. So in a sense, it was my mother's very fierce will that said, okay, now you are a daughter, you have this talent, and I'm going to expose you. So with Raji Auntie, I started learning folk dance. And in those days, we didn't only learn Bharatanatyam. We learned snake dance. We learned a dance that was on the plate. We called it a plate dance. Then we learned a gypsy dance. And then we also learned what we call one andai, which is a traditional Tamil sacred liturgical chant. So those were the days when we were rehearsing for 2-hour kacheris or 2.5-hour formats. And my Arangetram with Raji Narayan was at my own mama's wedding reception. The standard wedding receptions had either the engagement evening or the day of the reception, you'd have a full-fledged, either a Carnatic music kacheri or a Bharatanatyam performance. And the bride and the groom would sit with the big mala on a couch, like one of those big couches rented from film sets, I think. And they would just watch patiently. So those really were, in a sense, the days. And I remember that after that, Raji auntie, I called her auntie, she had to leave for Mumbai for various reasons, medical, her son was not well. So suddenly there was no one to continue my education. And at that point, I was very, very fortunate. And this is something that I want to tell the viewers, that you need to be fortunate to get the right guru in your life. My early guru gave me the joy of dancing, which meant that I didn't have this strict, like, sit and aramandi, I didn't have to go through that. I had fun dancing. So I was able to find my natural expression. And I was naturally a very sort of expressive young girl. When Lakshman sir arrived into our lives, because my sister, a year younger than me, she was also learning with me, he didn't come alone. He came with 3 other gems, and I really call them the modern 20th century quartet. There was for the training from the Kalakshetra Parampara. Then came Madurai Seturaman sir, marvelous, marvelous musician. And then came Trichu Ramanathan sir, who was the mridangist. And fourth was the musician and composer, he was a composer called Madurai N. Krishnan, who came from the Ariyakudi Ramanuja Iyengar Parampara of Bani. So can you imagine inheriting 4 gems when you're maybe 11 or 12 and working with them for 7, 8 years continuously and being the muse for an entire new Bhakti Margam? Yeah. And I use this word Bhakti Margam because in those days, and I really have to say those days, because I'm talking of the 1960s now, we didn't have access to compositions that we thought would be appropriate for young girls to dance. We had several compositions from the hereditary and traditional families, but it was for more mature dancers, not for a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old growing up into a new India. So there was also, my mother had to face a lot of resistance from her in-laws. My father's parents and his side of the family were very, very against my dancing. And they would always tell my mother and give her a big scolding that nobody will marry Anita. Proudly, oh, my daughter's a dancer. I smile because I know of those days, you know. But my father, I have to thank him. He could have just sort of taken his family's side. He was a wall for my mother and for me. And so that is also something, I think you have to be lucky to get the right combination of family support and the right gurus. Now, learning Bharatanatyam, I was very restless. My body was very restless. I just found that the technique, I was good in talam, I was good in abhinaya, I would pick up very quickly. I had what is said in Tamil, karpura buddhi, which means it catches flame. I could just pick it up. But there was something else in me that needed. So one evening, my mother took me to a wedding reception, and there was Hema Malini doing Mohiniyattam. This was in the 60s. Hema Malini. My mother and I fell in love with it and said, okay, she said, okay, you're a little rebellious in dance class. Do you want to learn Mohiniyattam? I said, yes. So that was my first sort of, I would say, window into more freer movement, because the circulatory movement allowed me to use my body, whereas the Kalakshetra style of Lakshman sir was just a very straight Natya Rambam and a very straight, you know, that. But there was that. So I started discovering movement possibilities, kinetic possibilities to do. For me, the Kathakali was then the next kind of transition. The Mohiniyattam training came from my mridangist, actually, my mridangam Vidwan Trichu Ramanathan, who had learned Mohiniyattam in his early days, because we did not have a Mohiniyattam teacher in Chennai. And he had learned from a very great teacher called Chinna Ammu Ammal in Kerala. So once every few months, I would be taken with my mother and my teacher to Chinna Ammumal so that she could just watch me and say, okay, and all that. So it was a kind of a little bit. And in Mohiniyattam, we didn't have many items in those times. We didn't have enough to fill an evening's repertoire. I'm talking of 1965. At the same time, there was a lot of research being done, but it hadn't yet emerged into what we now see as a Mohiniyattam Margam. So understand, I have a Bharatanatyam, Mohiniyattam, Kathakali now kinetic. Kathakali was, my teacher was Kalamandalam Balasubramanya Warrior, who still talks about me as being one of his best and favorite students and keeps reminding me that I have to go back to my Kathakali. So with that, I then went into what I call the meditative movement arts. I had a very chronic asthma as a child, so I had to go to yoga and to Krishnamacharya Acharya taught me of my yoga. So that has been, of my asthma, really, really bad asthma. I had to be taken to the hospital on many occasions. But by 12, 13, my asthma was cured. But for those who have asthma, for those who have asthma very early, it always affects your lung capacity. So that is something that I'm still consciously have to always work on before I'm training for a performance. So there was yoga, and then there was Kalari, and then there was Tai Chi, then there was Qigong. These kinds of movement arts or meditative arts come from a space which is sort of opposite to dance, because you work in silence and you also work with understanding your breath and the rhythm that your body will naturally take without being dictated by music and lyrics and rhythm from the outside. So that, and my 10 years of living in New York, not dancing very much or not at all, working in television, watching a lot of Western dance, contemporary, opera, ballet, gave me a kind of a
wholesome
crucible,
view.
a crucible of arts. The way directors talked to choreographers and painters talked to musicians and poets talked to artists. Though that kind of cross-illumination could have been in India, maybe in the Shantiniketan of Gurudev Tagore. New India was becoming more fragmented, and people were trying to discover what their identity was. So when I returned to India, I said, I have to find a new way. I have to find a new marga. I didn't want to go back to Bharatanatyam, that I was very clear on. But what did I want to do? I knew what I wanted to do was bring all the strands of my training, my education in English literature, my training in Kalakshetra, in dance history, my master's in television and theater, my PhD in women's studies. So why should I push one at the expense of the other? So that was really my search. And believe me, not to dance in your 20s, to return to India at age 32, and then to start trying to create a new vocabulary when things had changed completely was a very long road.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your initial question, or maybe
I've
I've answered many questions in one.
Yes. And although this is not a scheduled question, I'd like to personally ask you this. When people say contemporary dance, what does contemporary mean actually? And especially for you, who has been awarded the National Award for Contemporary Dance. So what is contemporary? What is classical? I want to know the definition.
Fix on one kind of contemporary, very much like we have many Indias. We must allow different kinds of expressions. Now, when we look at the history of, say, Indian contemporary dance, we always go back to Uday Shankar, or we go back to, we may look at Ram Gopal.
Yeah.
We might look at Chandralekha. We have moments, we have modern moments in our history. And we must look at it like that. There is no continual timeline. After all, Rukmini Devi Arundale in Kalakshetra was also then a modernist when you look at what she created, right? So we can look at her work also as modern Bharatanatyam, as being infused with and informed by her years as a ballet dancer. So we have many people who have contributed to what I can call new dance or neoclassical dance in the beginning. today Chandralekha is embraced by the classical community, saying, look at the way she used Bharatanatyam bodies from Kalakshetra to form her work, the vision of her work. But when she arrived on the scene and when she decided to create, she was a rebel. She was a renegade because of her background in feminism and other kinds of, immersions in politics and women's issues. Now we also have for us what we use, and it has. Having said that, I will not say that everything about things that are not Indian are bad. But what the contemporary dance scene made us realize, or made me realize, that we need to focus on our sharira, our bodies, because there is more to expressing than just the face, which is the Indian system. See, west of India, we don't use the face. East of India, we mask the face. Yeah. So it is the Indian tradition of using the face, the navarasas and beyond, and using every minutiae of eyebrows and eyelids and the eyes and the cheek and the nose and the lips and the chin. So this is a great learning. But many classical dancers then resort to this, and then they let the rest of their body out of tune. Yeah. So there's no connect. So the contemporary dance discipline, or the rigor of having to always hone your body as an instrument, that became apparent. But in your early 30s, I was unwilling to go and start taking classes in, say, contemporary dance as a Western dance. And there was no way that my legs were going to split in a straight line, or I was going to roll on the floor or engage with floor the way contemporary dancers, Western dancers do, or the way young dancers today can do in India. So it's very important for us to understand that there is no one kind of contemporary dance that is necessarily suited for us. What phase in our lives are we? And what are you doing? Contemporary dance has so many different techniques. We say Graham Limon and now Paul Taylor, and we've got Cunningham. So we've got different techniques, very much like we've got the different schools. But eventually it all comes down to the way the body works. Yeah. There's so many kinds of ways of expressing. For the Indian system, I found that many Indian dancers were beginning to explore. And many of them came from classical dance. They came from a body trained in classical dance. And here it's quite remarkable to see that it is Bharatanatyam and Kathak, these two styles, that have actually lent themselves to contemporary work. So when you see a lot of today's contemporary dancers, I would say almost maximum would come from these two streams of styles. But then now you're seeing some very interesting work coming out of Manipur, for instance. So there are different kinds of elements that are springing up about contemporary dance. Every expression is in India is trying to do, is trying to express negating the face, but it's also trying to use elements like lighting and simpler costumes and elements like maybe even a white piece of paper, So it's trying to express from the here and now, rather than looking back and retelling a familiar story from history, legend, and mythology. I'm very excited about this field of contemporary dance now. My work, let me tell you, can be considered very personal. And my evolution is a personal journey, which can bring you straight to the next question of Neo Bharatam. So there you are.
Yeah, so Akka, I would like to talk about this technique which you have developed called Neo Bharatanatyam. And also you were telling me that you can't teach this style to anyone. This is your own personal vocabulary, your own personal language, so maybe you can touch upon that, and also take us through the journey of how you started choreographing your own, productions using this vocabulary, while not restricting, just to the facial expression or just to the physicality of it, but also bringing in, props and visual design and costuming and sound design, so if you can just take us through this journey and begin with it.
It was very clear that Bharatanatyam would be the foundation from which I would build, like the scaffolding of the various other inputs of my new style. So Neo Bharatam is actually what it is. Bharatam being the Tamil word for Bharatanatyam. Bharatanatyam is the most Sanskritized versions. Neo being new, inspired by Keanu Reeves' character in The Matrix. So this was, he was called Neo. And I named it after walking out of that theater. He was a hacker, but I said I was going to be within the field and I was going to be a hacker. And I'm going to be from within. I'm not going to come from without and, make slurs against the classical dance and all that. I love the form. I just didn't relate to the repertoire. So Neo Bharatam is built on what I call an autobiographical practice. An autobiographical practice which comes from a personal experience, diary, family, memory. It could be an image. It could be a story being reimagined in a new way. Because I was not somebody who beautiful clothes or putting jasmine in my hair or enjoying good food. So I wanted to create a style that would also celebrate my love of fashion, textiles, visual design, and bring it into a kind of a crucible where I could do something by wearing a kind of what we call a costume, but actually I could actually wear that same thing to a party. I wanted to bring my life and my art together. So that was my larger view. Coming back to really building vocabulary. Building vocabulary came from theater. Theater allows you to sit with the director and the artists, the actors, in a circle. It's a very democratic process. You sit around and you discuss the script. You discuss the script. So you sit down, you don't discuss any composition of music. I did not start with the Indian way of having, here's a lyric, here's the music, now choreograph to it. I started in silence. So that was very difficult because we're used to reaching for story, reaching for lyric, reaching for that. But when you start in silence in a blank sheet, and then you say, okay, how are you going to tell the story of, say, Devi? Okay? And I've been a great lover of history and parallel mythology. So how are you going to tell that? Visual is going to be extremely important. And at the risk of being criticized as being either a fashion model, a fashion play, too distracting, I said, no, the visual frame is extremely important. You have to take care of everything. You have to take care of the lighting. You've got to take care of your costume. It has to be the right color. It has to be the right texture. And within all that, all of them are co-performers. You are also the performer. It was, so I was thinking of everybody as parallel performers. I started.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about Matrika, the production that you did.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
You have delved in costume design and visual design and sound design at a very rudimentary level. So if you could just talk about that, it would be really interesting to know your process.
Would you like me to talk about it with connection to Matrika?
Yes, absolutely.
Or just get.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Matrika, So Matrika was about the three Devis, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Devi. This time for Devi, I took Meenakshi, who's the Tamil goddess and whose temple is in Madurai. She is another aspect of Devi, Parvati. Now, how would I tell this story in a fresh way? So, as I said, I'm reaching for personal diary. He was denied education after after second standard. And she was a widow by the time she was 40. And she lived to be 97. Beautiful, wonderful, amazing woman who taught herself how to read and write English, who taught herself so many things. And she's been a rock. So I said, okay, this is my Saraswati. This is my Saraswati who, though she wore white, would still have the capacity to laugh, to engage, to cook us our favorite little treats, to be there to raise my 2 children when I was a single parent. Who was a fountain of native wisdom. So that was it. That she was my Saraswati. So I reached for her story. And so Matrika, I envisioned, and this is very important that I talk in terms of collaborators. Now, in India, we tend to devalue the idea of choreography. We think we create our own work all the time, or our gurus create it. We learn an item from a guru, we go somewhere and we just cut and paste. I decided that I needed an outside eye. I needed a choreographer, a costume designer, a lighting designer, a music designer. So I wanted to surround myself with a team of good people. I always have learned one thing from my parents. If you pay peanuts, have a team that I could also grow with. I would grow with, not a feudal system of I'm here and all of you are somewhere else. So I was very, very lucky to find the choreographer and the costume designer who live in Canada, but they would come to India very often, both of Tamil origin, or Hari Krishnan and Rex. And they both had these, really, really bold ideas. But I was also ready to risk.
Yeah.
I was really ready to risk. And I was ready to risk and fail and fall. And I think that's a very important aspect, because not everything I've done has succeeded. But I've gone back to ask, why, and build. Matrika had Saraswati, which was a personal diary of my grandmother's life, broken up into 3 sections, interspersed between a traditional Bharatanatyam Kautvam, the mnemonic syllables. And for that, I was given a long white, almost like an achkan kind of a dress with the letters, English letter A, the Tamil alphabet A, and because that's Anita so as I said, personal diary, always where is the dance coming from? So that was all in white. And it was very still after the dance sections, the moments of reflection of my grandmother, the time she heard the phone call, and which was of her husband's dying of a heart attack, the last time she ever lit a lamp that she always would do. I brought back all those into a narration. For Lakshmi, the middle section, we decided to have lots of fun. Because remember in 2009, India was changing. We were getting into the page 3 culture. Yeah. And we were getting into a state where we had entertainment and arts were sort of coming together, right? So we decided to make Lakshmi a fashion ramp model. She was walking on the catwalk, and she was not just a fashion model, she was also becoming the preening Bharatanatyam dancer that was posing, look at me, beauty, beauty, and the Tamil film actress going this, because a lot of the actresses in Tamil cinema in the 40s and 50s were very expressive. They all had classical dance training. They were always doing this and this and this, even when they were doing songs. So we said, let's morph them all together. So that was Lakshmi having lots of fun with a long braid, like a braid, and then twirling it around my neck like a fur collar, and then walking the ramp. So it was, in a sense, not making fun of, but I was citing as the fashion model, as the posing Bharatanatyam dancer. So that was a very interesting moment that many feminist scholars have picked up on. For Meenakshi, I turned the story on its head because she is a warrior princess who's supposed to have defeated everybody, and then she sees Shiva, she challenges him to battle, sees Shiva, says, come on, I'll take you on. And then according to legend, she suddenly becomes very coy because the 3rd breast that she's born with disappears, and then she marries him. So we decided, I'm going to turn it on its head. So Meenakshi meets Shiva, and a lot of the choreography was fully martial, because she was a warrior princess. So we go from a very meditative, more formal kinetic of the Bharatanatyam and personal diary, movement and stillness. We go to playful, fashion, little bit of kuchipudi playfulness, a little bit of naughtiness, And then we go to a more martial Meenakshi. So Meenakshi looks at Shiva and says, I don't think I'm ready to give up my third breast. Because you and I are so well matched. You have 3 eyes, I've got 3 breasts. I think we make a perfect match. So it is taking ideas and re-knitting them, reframing them. And definitely I would say I love to use humor. I love to use the idea of a little chuckle. So extremely provocative at the time it was premiered. And please understand, I premiered it at Sri Krishna Gana Sabha in the December Chennai Margari season. I had gasps when I started walking the ramp. And then I got cheers and whistles from the younger in the audience. So, but I was willing to risk. I was willing to have wardrobe malfunctions, which I did. And 11 years later, it's still in my active repertoire because it has something to say to a younger audience about how you can take mythology, stories, legend, and not in a fixed way, but you can really turn it on its head if you choose to, and are willing to take the risk.
Yeah, you choose very feminist oriented
Yes.
themes, and you know, one of your productions, Million Sitas, I think I saw it in Delhi, is also, you know, a reflection on the different characters of Sita. And if you can just take us through Million Sitas, that's also a very interesting production.
Million Sitas was created again, first premiered in December for the Chennai season, more as a dance work. But I always feel every Indian woman has to confront Sita at some point in her life, you know, especially dancers. Sita, not necessarily Rama, but Sita. And when we look for compositions on Sita, we don't have many. We don't have as many as people have adored, you know, Sri Rama. But I said, you know, let's look at this story. Let's look at characters: Sita, Surpanakha, Mantara, Ahalya, Mandodari. Once again, this was created in collaboration with Hari Krishnan and Rex, because we just sit and talk and thrash things out together. What are the characters that would have interesting stories, but possibilities for different kinds of color choices and movement choices? Because ultimately you're doing something on stage. And so kinetic variations are very important when we look at it. The version you saw in Delhi has moved so much from its 2010 avatar. It moved from a dance version to a dance theater version. And on the way, it's become more global. And I hope to show you some of the props. So we decided we would take Sita, and then we would use Ahalya, because there was the whole idea of what does chastity mean, and the politics of desire. And what does punishment mean when a woman just longs for touch and for companionship and to be cherished and loved? We chose Mantara because she's the one who's the catalyst for the story. She's the one who creates the ripples, throws the stones, so Rama goes to the forest. Mandodari, because look, she has such an interesting history. She was once a frog. But you know, in North India, she's also considered the daughter of Vishwakarma. So we looked at all the various levels, and without Surpanakha's intervention at the time in the forest, and if she had not, once again, the politics of desire, so we had these 5 women and Sita in the fulcrum. So it was very important for me to retell the story from the woman's voice, saying that without these women coming at the points in the story, we don't have a story. But without Sita fighting with Rama to go to the forest with him, if she had stayed back, again, we don't have a story. So if Mantra had not done what she did, may I show you some of the props that I have created, or sourced? I'd love to. Okay. So here we have, this was Mantara, which is a butterfly, which comes from one of the myths that says she chose to take the form of a butterfly. She was actually an Apsara. She wanted to enjoy the gardens of the most beautiful palaces on earth. And she was just there as a butterfly. And then she's called suddenly by the gods, you know, Mantra, come on, you have to do your work. You have to come, forget this avatar and turn to something else. because there's a big story to be told. So it was Manthara the butterfly. For Sita, we took a story from a mango. Okay, we just took a mango. And because there's a lovely story of Ravana going into the forest in Lanka and praying for the perfect child, and then Shiva as an old man giving him a mango and saying, cut it in two, you eat half, give your queen half. But Ravana swallows the whole mango, he's hungry, he gets pregnant, and he births Sita through a sneeze. So Sita doesn't just mean born from a furrow in the earth, it also means a sneeze. So we took a mango. And then we had, for Ahalya, I just have a long 20-foot train of gray cloth, you know, which I then just wrap as she's trapped in this whole thing of chastity. Then we had, for Mandodari, because there was the color green and the allusion to the frog, this was beautiful. It was just a lovely green, long glove from which, you know, you can do all the movements. So there was Mandodari green. And then Surpanaka is really my favorite because it comes to so much drama. Here, this was a Malaysian queen. Yes, you recognize this.
Yeah.
Yes. But then we also need, you know, she was Surpanaka, thigh nails. And then there was, and of course, I changed little earrings each time, you know, for each segment. Then when I went to South Africa, I saw this. This is called the Indibele, which women weave. It's fully beaded, all beads, very intricately done. I'm going to bring it close to the camera for you to see, very beautifully, intricately done. And young girls wear it for traditional ceremonies, you know, when they get married, engagement. So this is something that's very happy, the Indibele. And then for Ravan, because I wanted something strong, this is again from South Africa. I took this and I took this. They're both, you know, like a very strong, a very strong neck. And then these are elements from Kathakali, from the Kathakali costume. Yeah. So this. And then when he becomes a beggar, when he pretends to beg outside Sita's hut, this becomes the begging bowl from which to say Bhavadi Bhikchan Dehi. So props that take on different meanings. And in the final scene, when Sita is actually asking around the question, like, is it right for you to reject me? Instead of the Agni Parikshha streets of New York, and I just went into a museum shop and I saw this, a book that becomes a light.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so this is what was the Agni Pariksha moment. And at the very end, you just close the book like this, and then you have finished telling the story.
Yes.
So my interest in telling the story in more theatre evolved over time as I kept revisiting this work. And I've used it as a case study even in women's colleges, and asked questions about chastity, about desire, about you know, dharma, and it's very interesting the kind of responses that it comes. So Million Sitas is one of my now most popular productions.
Yeah.
So it's great fun to travel with.
And
yes.
You can see that not only just feminist-oriented productions, but they're also very global in appeal. Because you know, you have something from Africa and something from, you know, Kerala,
Malaysia,
Malaysia,
yes, South Africa, and I think that, yeah. Tell me, please ask.
Please.
No, I wanted you to finish your question so that I could continue the answer.
But you're still very grounded and rooted in Indian aesthetics, and your tryst and your work with Andal has been, like you said, your work, you know, lifelong journey. And you've done like what, 5 full-length productions on Andal.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about that also.
I think that I think every woman born Tamil girl, born in the Vaishnav strain, you know, of faith, I really feel that when she emerges into the world from her mother's womb, I feel that Andal is watching. Andal is there as a witness. And I really encountered Andal first as a young student because for my Arangetram, I did her one Tirupave, Margari Tingal, where she talks about the beauty of the December season. And but I came of age on Andal's birth star. And I remember my mother being very worried and talking to my grandmother, today's Andal's birth star, and she's come of age. I don't know what she's going to do. Many years later, my mother said, this is going to be, maybe this is it. You're just singing and dancing in her praise. That's it. She's singing and you're also doing it. But that apart, I don't have, once I started my journey in Neo Bharatam and a more contemporary mode of creation, of performance, I can't call it dance anymore, performance, dance theatre, don't gravitate to the new age gurus. So I found Andal was my anchor in the sense that I would just go and just reread her poetry, even if I was not doing her poetry. Because for me, a young girl, a teenage girl, age 13 possibly, or 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, the fierceness with which she believed something, the passion with which she was convinced that she was right, and the pride she took in her body. When you look at other female mystic saints, you don't have a sense of embodied exuberance that Andal has. She talks of her beautiful body, her breasts, her lips, her eyes. So she was very rooted in who she was then. She was convinced that she was the person. So I just found that very, very fascinating. Many people only concentrate on the first 30 verses, where it's more used for congregational worship. I was focused on both. I wanted to hear both her voices. And it ends in a very sort of plea and a ragged voice to say, I can't see anymore, I'm weak, my eyes are blurring. So now there is more study and more translations of Andal. But it's fascinated me. So yes, I've done 6 productions, solo, group, and my latest one called Natyar Next, which is really an update from Natyar of 2000, continues to explore her with my new information on Neo Bharatam, narration. I played Andal then. I don't play her now. I play the voice, the conscience, the foster mother. But really what is amazing and remarkable is this young woman was a forerunner of all the pantheon of mystic saints that followed, from Akka Mahadevi in Karnataka to Sakkubai and Janabai in Maharashtra. And then we go to Lalde, then we go to Mirabai. And very interestingly, Madhur, I have to say, if you look at many of these legends, you want to know how they lived, but how did they die? They don't really die. They disappear. Some people say you disappear into a cave, you go into effulgence, and somebody drowns in a river. And so, which brings me to a larger question that should interest dancers and writers and poets, and especially women studies people. Was it because that these women were too troublesome in their time, that they upset the family system? Some of them were married, some of them were wives, some of them were daughters-in-law, many of them were ill-treated, many of them were cast out. After a while, but we have never allowed them to grow old. We've never allowed them to share wisdom. It's wonderful in a sense that they've always been young, vibrant, and then shook out, you know. So these are questions that are very fascinating. Yeah, Andal has been with me. Natyar Next is my 6th production. I'm thinking of making it as a kind of a quiet storytelling version, which I can then travel, because it's a very large production now, 10 artists and live orchestra. And now with the reality of where we are, we're going to return to simple and potent and effective. But Andal is with me. She's right behind me.
Yes, right, you can see her there.
Right behind me, wearing an emerald necklace. And yeah, she's watching. She sometimes says, but she's watching. I am the elder now in the family. My parents are no more. And she always has something to reveal to me. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to continue to revisit her work
So
and her life.
now, especially in these times, what do you think is the way forward? Not just for us privileged artists, but for the artist community at large. And what can make one just get through these times? And what is your advice?
To start with, that I think about after a while, I think our riyaz needs to be to put down the mirror, not worry about the riyaz all the time of whatever style we're doing, but the rigor of what is happening around us in life. We must be aware of things outside of us. What's happening in the politics of our state and our country? How can we pick up the phone and speak to somebody? It can even be another artist outside our discipline. I think that we need to remake these connections, because right now I'm speaking to you not face to face, but through the medium of technology. And technology is going to be a very important way of how the arts are going to be mediated. And I'm talking about the live performing arts. If music, dance, and theater are only going to be flattened by this TV screen or our iPad screen or our phones, then what is the kind of art we have to create? Is there going to be any patience to watch 30-minute long varnams? I think not. I think all my earlier preoccupations with lighting, framing, how does the human form get reduced to this when you're watching? So film director Rajiv Menon said something very interesting. He said, the way we are going to watch dance is going to be very different. It's going to be the way we read a novel. We read one chapter, we put the book away, we come back later, we pick it up again. Is it going to be shorter pieces? Is it going to be collaborative with other arts? But it's very important that dance cannot be insular. We cannot only talk to musicians and dancers. I want this composition, I'll dance to it. We have to look at how to upskill ourselves with technology and the visual arts. And we have to put aside egos and prejudices about class and race and caste and social standing, because this is not something that is picked one class against the other. It's not picked one country against the other. We are in this all together. This has never before happened in our lifetime, that every theater in the world is shut. Museums are shut. Libraries are shut. Colleges are shut. Nothing where people can congregate. And that is what dance needs. Dance needs the rasa. We dance, we have a live audience, the alchemy and the warmth of the seeing eye. And that is what creates that shared experience. How long can we dance in our homes and keep transmitting through technology? We won't get the rasa. So how can we create a digital sabha? What is the way in which maybe a few months later when it becomes a little more safer? So, but artists have to stay alert. We have to keep our minds alert, because there is so many ways of falling prey to depression, to all kinds of paranoia and fear. And go and find something that makes you happy. Go find something that you can do with safety precautions that makes you happy. Do you want to play a favorite film tune and dance to it? Do you want to play a new pop song and move to it? Anything that makes your body happy. And never think that this is right and wrong. Classical dance tells you what is right and what is wrong. But today, we have to live in a shared world. And the body, as it grows, is trying to do so many things. The freedom of trying to move or just have simple things like this, everything is okay now. We come back to who we are in a shared humanity. For me, that's very, very important for all artists to remember.
And thank you, Akka, so much for giving me time today and taking us through your journey, which is really a revelation, especially for classical dancers who are, I don't know, somehow bound in their own, restrictions. And it's really uplifting to hear from someone, who has dedicated her life to exploring new frontiers. So thank you so much, Akka.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to tell young people that if you want to be really unusual, you have to be willing to risk. If you don't risk, and if you don't fail, and if you don't fall, it's something original. You will always be an imitator. So just stop watching things and imitating. You know, I'm an example. I've risked, I've failed, I've faltered, I've left dance, I've come back to dance. And it's, you have to be able to grapple with this messy world. Nothing is beautiful, nothing is a happily ever after ending. If you don't passionately engage, we are never going to be able to move this art forward. Thank you, Madhur.
Thank you, Akka. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Namaste.